Well, we're on to April, and April is the coolest month. Hello and welcome to another episode of this channel thing. This is Creatively Torn, a channel where I mostly talk about books, but sometimes don't. This is once again another monthly update, this time for the month of April. So, as I usually do, I go over the books I read in the previous month, anything I'm currently on, and what I will plan to read in the next month. So, let's go ahead with that. I also will be doing a book of the month, which I believe I did last month. I forgot it in January. So I did it last month. It was... You have to go back and look and see what it was. I don't remember. But I'll be doing that as well. So let's go ahead and get started with the books I read in March. Admittedly, it was not a productive month for me. I had only finished a couple of books. But there is a good reason for that. For part of it, I would say. One of the books I read was quite large and quite dense. So you'll see what I mean when I get there. So the first book that I did finish was The Well of Ascension by Sanderson. This will be book 2 in Mistborn, Era 1. As far as Mistborn goes, it's not my favorite. I was pretty lukewarm on the first one. I'd say I like this one even less. So maybe I'm Luke Cool on it. Cool Hand Luke, something like that. I don't know, but it was not my favorite. It was very slow and very weirdly structured, I would say, maybe. The first half had a lot of political dealings, but the second half or so kind of makes the first half relevant. I don't know, it's just not my favorite book. I didn't really like any of it, but the good thing about book 1 was that it was very fast-paced and very breakneck speed. So even though I didn't really enjoy the writing style or the characters, it was a very quick book to read. Whereas book 2, it was very slow. So it was a bit of a slog for me. And I ended up giving it a 3 out of 5, which is about average. It means I didn't hate it, but I didn't particularly like it either. I do want to finish up the trilogy, which I will be doing. Actually, I am doing now, so we'll get there when I get to it. But that would be the first book that I finished in March. So moving on, the next one is the big book that I talked about. It is the dense book. It is Finnegans Wake by Joyce. So if you're unaware of this book, this is by Irish author James Joyce. This was his last published novel, I believe, and it's often considered one of the most densest and hardest books to read in the English language, and partly because it's not even really in English. It's in a variety of languages. Includes misspelled words, weird stops, weird sentence structures, all kinds of different things. It's very different to read, I'll say. So I do plan to make a video about this at some point, once I figure out what I want to do about it, what I want to say in that video, that is. So as far as this one goes, obviously it's a very dense book, and it's one that is hard to decipher. So I didn't figure I would really understand what was going on when I decided to read it. And I'm okay with that. It was a very pleasant book to read nonetheless. It's very poetic, very funny. So even if I don't really understand what's going on, still enjoy reading it. And I do want to read it again at some point. And hopefully maybe I'll understand more of it. I don't really know how to rate this book, so I'm not even going to bother trying. But that was Finnegans Wake. It was a book I read in March. Definitely. Next up is a much more straightforward book. This was Red Rising, the first book in the Red Rising series by Pierce Brown. It's a sci-fi series about the future of mankind and things like that. Very good book. Very interesting book. A very popular series right now. I want to catch up with. The first book I did quite enjoy, and a lot of people say that the first book is the weakest, and a lot of people say that they couldn't get past the first one. I really enjoyed it though. It's not a perfect book. It's not a very complex book, but it was very fun. Had some great quotes in it, some nice action, some really good characters. So overall, I gave it a 4 out of 5, and as I said, I do want to continue on with the series. So I'm hoping the fanfare about the sequels is not overblown. Anyways, that was Red Rising. So then, the only other book that I finished reading in March was East of Eden by John Steinbeck. This would be my third Steinbeck book, and the best one so far, and probably his best, if you're going from what history says, I guess. East of Eden was one of the ones I really wanted to read very soon, and I finally got around to it, and I really enjoyed it. Really good character work, very atmospheric and poetic. Really interesting story, a really lasting legacy as far as the book goes. I know it spawned a movie in the 50s. I think it was in the 50s. Like I said, the characters are very well done in this book. As an example, there's a section where you can get the point of view of a rabbit for about 2 paragraphs. And you're like really invested in this rabbit and what he's doing and what he's experiencing in that moment. So it's just kind of the things you can expect from this book. All the characters are very well done, very relatable. So I do want to do a video review of this one as well in the coming weeks, so look out for that. And I gave this one 5 out of 5. It's a very good book. I had a few minor issues with it, but nothing that would really drag it down for me. So as far as the book of the month, there's not a lot of competition here. It's not going to be the Wall of Ascension. It's not going to be Finnegans Wake, so it really only leaves 2 contestants. And while I did enjoy Red Rising, it is still a very basic story and a very short story. And it being as part of a series, it's only one piece of a puzzle of a larger story. So the book of the month is going to be East of Eden. It's a much more grand and sweeping narrative with lots of things to say. And there's a reason why it stood the test of time. That's a very universal narrative, I think. A very good book about growing up and having kids, and lots of really interesting stuff about the time period being in the American West, shortly after the Old West of the cowboys and things like that, but before the 20th century got going. So it's a very interesting time period that you don't hear a lot about, kind of a time of transition. Anyways, I've said enough about that book. I'll have to make a video about that very soon so I can talk more about it. Anyways, that's the book of the month for March. And so let's move on to what I am currently reading. And what I am reading right now is the Tommyknockers by Stephen King. I think I said last month I was going to pick a random Stephen King book to read for March, and I ended up going with the Tommyknockers. It's quite a doozy of a book. It's around 900 pages. It's probably one of his less popular books. We'll see how it goes. So far it's kind of slow going. Has some interesting stuff in it though. I'm only about a quarter of the way through it. The other book that I am currently reading, I just recently started, is book 3 of Mistborn, The Hero of Ages. So I'm hoping to finish that up very soon. Well, I'm gonna have to because it's a library hold and it's a very popular book, so I won't be able to renew it most likely. So I'll have to finish that up very soon. I'm looking forward to seeing how the trilogy ends though. I've heard that the conclusion is very fitting and very well done, so I'm kind of looking forward to seeing how it ends and then looking forward to moving on to something else. Anyways, what I'm going to read in April, I really have 2 big priorities and then some other things after that. The first priority is the continuation of Red Rising series. So I want to read Golden Sun, which is book 2 of the series. in book 2 of the first trilogy. So I'm going to read that very soon. There is a new book in the series coming out in July, I believe, so I would like to try and catch up with that if I can. So I'm going to try and get going on that this month. The other one I want to prioritize is another fantasy series. This is a new release, by far the newest book that I've read so far. I actually haven't bought it yet, but we'll have to get that very soon. This is The Way of Edan by Phillip Chase. In case you hadn't heard, Phillip Chase is a booktuber and a recently published author and a professor. He just self-published his first book in a trilogy in March, The Way of Edan. It's been getting great reviews, so I want to check that out before I dive into a different fantasy series, because I'm getting the FOMO really bad with that one. So those are my 2 priorities for this month. After that, I do want to continue on with more of the Red Rising sequels, if I have time and if I can get my hands on the books. So that would be Morningstar Book 3 and Iron Gold Book 4. I have time for those, obviously, which is going to be a big if, because each book adds about 100 pages to its length, so they don't get any shorter, that's for sure. After that, I do want to probably take a break from fantasy and sci-fi and get to a book I've been kicking down the road for a while. That is The October Country by Ray Bradbury. I think I mentioned Ray Bradbury a few times on this channel before, but like I think I said in my previous update, this is a book of short stories about I don't know what, but I'm sure it will be apparent when I read it. And honestly, I could read anything by Ray Bradbury and it would be just a fun experience. So then after that, if I am ready for another classic, I will be diving into Great Expectations by Charles Dickens. At this point, I am very woefully underread on Dickens, having only read Oliver Twist and A Christmas Carol so far. And I do want to get to his big 3, either this year or early next year. That being Great Expectations, A Tale of Two Cities, and David Copperfield. And I don't know what any of those are about. As my furnace kicks on, it's always gotta make an appearance in my videos. So I don't know what any of these books are about from Dickens, but I know that Great Expectations is one that is often recommended as a place to start. Even though I'm not technically starting, I think it's a good place to continue on with, so it'd be a new experience for me. However, if I'm not ready for classic just yet, I will start another fantasy series. This would be the Greenbone Saga by Fonda Lee, the first book being Jade City. This is an Asian-inspired, maybe urban fantasy, about families and things like that. It's very well regarded these days, so I want to get into that, because I'm pretty sure I'm the last person alive who hasn't read those books yet. I have the first 2 on digital, so I can get to those whenever I feel like it. I think that's all that I need to say. Oh, there's one more. If I have time for it, I'll be reading Infinite Jest by David Foster Wallace. Getting roped into a read-along for this one. No idea what it's about. I think there's some tennis involved and maybe some drugs. I don't know. It's very similar to Finnegans Wake in that it's a very dense and confusing book. A lot of people say they're some of the 2 hardest books to comprehend. So reading those 2 back-to-back, or in back-to-back months rather, is certainly a thing that I'm doing, maybe. Yeah, I'll be getting to that probably late April, or maybe even in May. Read-along lasts for 3 months, so I've got time if I want to start it later. It's also a very large book though, so I can't wait too long. But I think that's all I have to mention. I can't imagine I'll have time for any other books besides that, so that's all. That's all, folks. So anyways, I'm going to stop talking now. But thank you for watching my monthly update ramble video. If you want to connect with me on Goodreads or Instagram, the links are in the description. The description down below. But that is all for me today. So thank you for watching again. The hero